Good morning. My name is Brenda Viveris, and we're here from the Greater Fall River Child Protection Council, and this is...
I'm Megan Tavares, and I'm a clinician from St. Anne's Hospital, and we are presenting today for the Child Protection Council, who's doing a follow-up to their fall training on childhood obesity. And today's presentation will focus on skills and tools for healthy living to help professionals in the community have coping skills to be able to bring home to families.
We know that childhood obesity is an epidemic here, especially with our Fall River families, and we're hoping that we can have a takeaway for our professionals so that we can actually have some tools to go away to help combat that problem.
Know that it's out there, and then on this side is the smoking information. So, and then my business card in case people have questions. So hopefully that'll work. Do you want me to pass them out?
Awesome. Yeah, I can help you pass them out.
All right.
Yeah.
Because we did purchase them for all our nutrition staff, and then our state people gave us these. You could probably go to myplate.gov
If you go to myplate.gov,
and check.
I think you can.
Yeah, because it doesn't say WIC on this at all. We use these to give to our parents to use as a tool for kids who are just on the cusp of becoming they're overweight
Yeah, that's great.
So it's a great tool. It's a great tool. Target department stores.
Yes.
All
right.
But
I'll go on
go on this
MyPlate.
choose myplate.gov.
And if you'd like, in the meantime, you're more than welcome to have one of the placemats.
Oh, okay.
They might like that too. On the back is the
Yeah, I'll show it to you. I'll take it. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to welcome everyone here to St. Vincent's Home for the Child Protection Council spring training. My name is Joseph De Silva. I'm the president of the Child Protection Council, and I'm also the Family Service Coordinator for the Fall River Housing Authority. Give you a little history of the Child Protection Council. The council was born out of the need to seek out solutions to the ever-increasing problems of child abuse and neglect, which became first evident in the mid-1970s. In 1976, Social Service Department of St. Anne's Hospitals sent letters to local children and service agencies calling for a joint effort to discuss issues and problems related to the network of children protective care. The response was excellent, and a task force was organized. Their report described the status of abuse and neglect in the Greater Fall River area, the community level of management and ideas and plan to begin to identify the issues. Everybody that is on the Child Protection Council, please stand up. And just put your hands up, the ladies in the back. Okay. So take a look around. These are all volunteers from different organizations and different agencies. We do not get paid for this. We meet once a month, the first Wednesday of every month here in the library at St. Vincent's. And they're gracious to let us use this facility all the time, free of charge. So, excuse me. If you're interested in joining the Child Protection Council, an individual registration for the year is $10. An agency fee is $20, and you can bring as many people from the agency for that $20. So it's well worth it. Okay. Now I'd like to introduce Brenda Viveris, who's from BMC HealthNet, and she's going to be the moderator for today's activities. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you and welcome for coming to our spring training. Everyone should have received a packet. I'm not going to stand so close to the mic because I do have a rather large voice. In your packet on the left side, before you leave, if you would be so kind as to please fill out, we have an evaluation. This is really important for us to know how we can do to actually help you with the work so that we can all combat this problem of childhood obesity here in the Greater Fall River area. So please take just a moment to fill this out as the panel concludes with their speaking. And also on the right-hand side, you'll see that there's a question sheet included in there. But what I didn't actually brainstorm was that I should have included more than one sheet so that at the end of each panelist, I can collect them and we can go over questions. So if you would be so kind as to write your questions on your pad that you got, and when you did your registration, I will come around during the, at the end of the panelists speaking, and I will collect questions, and then we'll have a question and answer segment at that time. And we hope you enjoy, again, the spring training, and we're going to move forward. So starting off, we have, she's a registered nurse. She has a maternal child health, she is a maternal child health nurse, for over 40 years. Her experience has included the NICU at Women and Infants Hospital, Level 2 Nursery at Charlton Memorial Hospital, the Family Outreach Program for VNA of Healthcare New England, and for the past 9 years, she has worked for People Incorporated in the Early Intervention Partnership Program. Please help me in welcoming Beverly Souza.
Hi. If you have any trouble hearing me, let me know. I doubt it, because anybody who knows me, and most of you do here, I have a good voice. This is very near and dear to my heart. Today I'm going to talk about the risk factors prenatally and postpartum for childhood obesity. It's a new and exciting subject. There's so much information out there, but it's so new that there's a lot of contradictory information. It's so new that, something 5 years ago, we're going back now and saying, no, we're not doing that. Years and years ago, we always thought that people were overweight or obese because they were lazy, because of they had no willpower, they were weak. Well, now we know a lot of it has to do with genetics and predispositions that start before a woman even gets pregnant. The studies have shown that if a woman is overweight or have an increased BMI, I'm going to use BMIs. If a woman has an increased BMI before she gets pregnant, her child is almost 50% more likely to develop childhood obesity. And it sets them off in a trajectory for life. If a child is obese by the age of two, they are more likely to be obese as adults. Now, where does genetics play into it? Genetics do play into it, but is it genetics or is it environment? That's the old question. Is it nurture versus nature? And even the professionals themselves cannot agree on this. Most of the information I have today is from the Harvard School of Public Health, and I also have information from a study done out of Ohio State University, and there was one study also done. The one from Ohio State University looked at pregnant women and followed them for almost till adolescence, their children. And that was done in the Boston area. And the other one, the biggest study out of that, was done in Michigan and New Jersey. And even myself, being in the field, I was astounded by some of the statistics. And I love statistics. I know a lot of people hate statistics, but I love throwing statistics out. And I do apologize if I read, because I can't remember all this stuff. So we know, again, if a woman is pregnant before the woman has an increased BMI before she gets pregnant, that grossly increases her chance, the child's chance of being obese. So prenatally, there are three factors that they are looking at right now that would increase a woman's risk for her offspring being obese. The number one, and people who smoke are going to get sick of hearing this, but smoking is number one. Women who smoke during their pregnancy, their child is up to 50% more likely to become obese, according to the Harvard School of Public Health. 50%. Now, I got to go back one. If a woman who is obese before she gets pregnant, if her BMI is up before she gets pregnant, we know that increases the child's risk, and it's even greater when the woman is Black or Hispanic. Now, is it because we know that children born in a lower socioeconomic environment are higher risk for obesity because healthy food is expensive and the unhealthy food is cheap, and we do know that more Blacks and Hispanics are in the poverty line, and their children grow up with the food that the mother gives them that's that's inexpensive. I cannot find, the professionals themselves cannot determine this themselves, okay? So a woman who smokes, their child is more likely. And we do know, at least in my own practice, and I've been doing this, like I said, home visiting for over 20 years for prenatal moms, I do know that about 60% of the women in my program smoke. 90-something% are under the poverty line. Now, we do know that a lot of times, I talk about stop smoking, and they'll say to me, well, I'm so under so much pressure, I really didn't want to get pregnant, I can't afford this pregnancy, and it's the only way to release the stress. Is it because women, again, we're looking at that poverty line, is it because women under the poverty line tend to smoke during pregnancy? And this was also verified by the Institute of National Health. Or is it because they're smoking themselves? I think, and according to the studies, it's both. The uterus is rich of nutrients and hormones, and at certain times during fetal development, if those hormones are interrupted, it can affect the child's well life. And besides, by the way, it's not just smoke, it's not just the chance for obesity. It's also the chance that these children are going to have high blood pressure and other factors. But today we're only looking at obesity. And again, we can go on and on about smoking during pregnancy. So the smoking is the #1 factor prenatally that will affect a woman's chance of her offspring being pregnant, being obese. Now, I do see more African Americans and Hispanics, especially Hispanics, smoking these days. I'm not saying middle-class people, women, don't smoke. But I do see that more and more of them that I see, as soon as they find out they're pregnant, they stop smoking. The minute they either stop breastfeeding or they have the baby and they're bottle feeding, they pick up that cigarette again. But they do know enough to stop smoking during their pregnancy. Is it that? Nobody can agree. And I've read study on top of study about it, and nobody can agree. What they do know is that interfering in the flow of the nutrients and hormones when a woman smokes does affect the baby throughout the baby's fetal development and throughout life. Medicine Institute of Health just said, 1990, they came out with the guidelines. They came out with all the guidelines on how much weight a woman should gain during pregnancy. Well, they did know that they said all women should gain between 30 to 35 pounds. They didn't look at the pre-pregnancy BMIs. And they found that these women now are gaining this amount of weight even more, and the babies are born very large for gestational age, very big. And when a baby's born very big, that sets them up for life for childhood obesity. They're not saying a woman should be on a diet during pregnancy. That's not what they're saying. And I didn't come up with all this information on how much a woman should gain and all this, but they are going at, if they don't know a woman's BMI before she gets pregnant, what they are doing now is they're looking at the first prenatal, they are trying to get clinicians to look at the mother's BMI on her first prenatal visit, or if they have a weight before she came for her first prenatal visit, and they're looking at that BMI to see how much a woman should gain. They're never saying a woman should lose weight during pregnancy, even if they are grossly obese. And I have seen this. They are never saying that. Women should never lose weight during pregnancy. It's not good, because even if it's coming off of them, it's still coming off the baby. What they are saying is, look at the BMI. Look at how much that woman weighs when she gets pregnant. And they do have, it's all online if anybody's interested, if anybody's a clinician and wants to know this information. But they are saying that they should gain a certain amount of weight. And they should stop, the women who gain 50, 60, 75 pounds, and I have seen it, those babies are more likely. Now, I do know somebody personally who gained 75 pounds when she was pregnant. 75 pounds. She had a preemie. The preemie weighed 4 pounds. That preemie was large for gestational age because that was only a 32-week preemie. Okay? She was always in the catch-up because she was tiny. But as an adult, by the time she was 23, she was obese. And her brother was different. Her brother, the mother didn't gain that 75 pounds because it took her almost 8 years to lose it, and then she gets pregnant again. She has another preemie. This time she's not laying on the couch eating a dozen Dunkin' Donuts, and literally she was eating a dozen of Dunkin' Donuts because this woman was very, very tiny. So she said, well, you know, she could always eat a dozen Dunkin' Donuts and not gain weight. Well, when she had her second baby, the doctor said, you can't do this, it's not good for the baby. She turned around, she had another preemie born at 32 weeks, who only weighed a little over 3 pounds, which is what the baby should weigh, and as an adult, he never got heavy. So, in my own, this is a family member of mine, but I do see this, that when a woman gains all that weight, plus it's not healthy for her, we're not going to go into all that, but it does put risk on the baby to grow up in this environment. So they are looking at the mother's weight before she gets pregnant and the weight she gains during her pregnancy. Anybody working with pregnant women, they should reinforce this. And the way I do it personally, I said, you know, anything over 30 pounds, that's yours to keep. And you think it's easy, but it ain't easy to lose it. I said, you know, it takes 9 months to gain the weight, you're going to take 9 months to lose it. But anything over 30 pounds, basically, it's yours. You own it. But I will not encourage a woman to go on a diet. And this is where it comes very, you know, you get the young girls who don't want to gain any weight because, one, they don't want people to know they're pregnant, or they don't want to get fat. Then you have the risk of having a low weight baby. But then you have the ones that say, well, I'm pregnant, I can't exercise, and I'm eating for 2. You don't need to eat for 2 when you're pregnant, even for 1, not 2. Okay? So that's the second fact, is the fact that women who gain excessive amount of weight during pregnancy, their children are more likely to become obese in life. The third one is gestational diabetes. When a woman, during pregnancy, the weight they gain is mostly adipose or fat tissue. That's how the belly grows, they gain that fat. They should gain that fat. But when they gain too much of that fat, that puts the insulin and the glucose passes the placenta and goes into the baby. And the baby, it affects their, I'm not going to go into the medical terms, but it does affect the baby's pancreas. And those babies tend to be large for gestational age, especially if the mother is a diabetic to begin with or develops gestational diabetes. These babies, I have seen these babies so fat, unbelievable when I work the NICUs. But we do know that babies born large for gestational age do tend to be overweight as an adult. So, what they want to do is every woman during their pregnancy being tested for gestational diabetes. It's part of protocol, it's best practice, doctors have to do it, but what we have to do for the people seeing these pregnant moms is make sure they go for those tests. Why do I go to the doctors? He only checks my pee and does this and then says, you're fine. Well, the urine will determine if there's sugar in the urine, which can be gestational diabetes. Also, making sure they go for that blood test. A lot of the young girls that I see don't like going for that blood test because they hate that training. It's disgusting. Yeah, it is. Truthfully, it is. I've had it, and it is disgusting. But it does determine. And gestational diabetes can also do other things. But one of the things is when that baby gains all that weight, that does increase the risk. Now, the recent studies show that if a woman is treated for gestational diabetes, even if it's a low risk or a moderate risk, even if they're treated, there really is no difference in the obesity later on in life. Which, again, this is also very controversial. However, but if she has bad gestational diabetes, and that's where they need the insulin, not just the diet controlled. Those children, because of the insulin, it gets very complicated. I'm not going to go into all that because that's a whole different subject. But when they have that insulin, they turn around, and the baby's making insulin, the mother's giving them insulin, they get very fat. It can be it's very dangerous for the baby. We already talked about one of them, is infant weight gain. Okay, I already talked about that. But along with infant weight gain, I'm going to put, this goes to the second one too, introduction of solids prior to 4 months of age. Okay? Over there you will see the belly balls. If you all looked at those little belly balls I have over there, That is the actual size of a baby's belly when they're born and up to so many months of age. That's the size of their belly. When you introduce solids before 4 months of age, a child who is bottle fed, I didn't even know this myself, some of this. A child who is bottle fed before 4 months of age is 6 times more likely to develop childhood obesity. 6 times. That's astronomical. And mothers will say, well, it helps babies sleep. Also, their oral motor muscles are not ready to handle solid foods, but what happens is it stretches those little bellies, it stretches them out, making them hungrier and hungrier. So you feed them more and more, and they get fat. Yes, they get fat. It's the unhealthy fat. You know, there are medical reasons why a child gets cereal before 4 months of age, especially if they have reflux and they've tried all kinds of medications. But lately, more and more doctors are realizing this is no good. And I have not heard of it, unless it's a severe preemie, a full-term baby getting cereal added to the formula before 4 months of age to treat reflux. It's more medication. Now, this is the part that really, really astounded me. If a woman is breastfeeding, there is no difference at all to early introductions of solids. It doesn't increase the child's risk at all for obesity. I was amazed. I always thought that it was, if a baby gets cereal before 4 months, it increases their risk. But according to the study, and this is the one done at Ohio State University, this says that if a woman is breastfeeding and cereal is introduced before 4 months of age, it doesn't increase the risk at all. Just another reason to breastfeed your babies or encourage breastfeeding. Developmentally, they're not ready for it. Again, the oral motor muscles are not ready to handle solids. But if a woman is breastfeeding, it's not as detrimental. I still wouldn't recommend it because their bodies also don't digest cereal appropriately before 4 months of age, and it's a carb, and carbs we know breaks down to a sugar, it's a starch, breaks down to a sugar, but that study is amazing. That's why I printed it out. If anybody's interested, I could, give you the website and you could look at it. I found it totally amazing. So that goes into the second part of increases the risk of breastfeeding or decreases the risk for a child with obesity, breastfeeding. This is one study. This is the study out of Ohio that says if a child is breastfed up to 4 months of age, it decreases the risk of childhood obesity by 22%. And for every month after that a child, until the age of 1, if a child is breastfed, every month you add 4% on top of that. Just another risk to breastfeed. I know I'm preaching to the choir because we've got a lot of people here who know the benefits of breastfeeding, but I love having these statistics so I can tell my prenatal moms and say, I'm thinking of breastfeeding, I'm not sure. If you go with this positive thing, if you go with these facts, that might, if they're on the fence, if they're not going to breastfeed, you're not going to talk them into it. If they say, no way, I'm not going to do it, I don't even bring it up again. But if they're on the fence, these statistics are astronomical as far as I'm concerned. This is one study, and more studies are being done, but this was a pretty big study. Okay? The third thing is sleep. Okay? The duration that a baby sleeps in a 24-hour period. And they said, this is a study of 950 children. Children who slept less than 12 hours in a 24-hour period, by the age of 3, they were more likely to develop childhood obesity. I don't have, again, this is out of what? Okay, 9% out of they increased their risk by 9%. Is it because children who don't sleep at night, mothers tend to give cereal? We don't know. But it does increase the risk. So those are the 3 things. 1, baby's weight gain. 2, initiating, bottle feeding the baby, or formula feeding the baby. In in also with giving cereal too early, or solids early, or 3, sleeping. And there's more. I'm not going to go into all this stuff. If anybody's interested, I have the websites of where I got this information. So we also, it goes into sleeping. Some of the things they did say is TVs in the child's bedroom afterwards. I'm looking at infants and prenatal moms. Okay, this might be, okay. Again, I do have, this is the study out of Ohio on breastfeeding. If anybody's interested, I could show it to them. And I do have some more studies here. So again, 3 things prenatally, 1 thing even before a woman becomes pregnant, 3 things prenatally, 3 things postpartum. And most of them has to do, prenatally is mother's BMI, nutrition, and afterwards, a lot has to do with breastfeeding. Okay. Anybody has questions? I may not have all the answers, but as I always say, I know where to look for them. Okay?
Great, thank you, Beverly. I'm going to go around and bring the microphone. If that's okay with you, you can actually ask the question.
Are they checking for diabetes only for obese women or every woman?
Every pregnant woman is checked at least once for gestational diabetes. Some OBs are doing it twice. It is recommended to do it twice as a woman enters their 2nd trimester and as a woman enters their 3rd trimester. Some doctors do it only at 20 weeks, some do it at 12 to 14, and then again 20 to 30 weeks. Most doctors do it twice. The insurance companies will pay for twice, but some OBs, and usually the older, I hate to pick on the older OBs because they're my age, but they are doing it only at the 20-week mark, but it is really recommended that it's been done twice. Especially, I think 20 weeks is waiting a long time. According to the studies, it should be done at the beginning of the 2nd trimester, which is about 14 weeks, during 14 weeks gestation. By 20 weeks, you also had a long period, because I have seen women at 12 to 14 weeks having to go on insulin, because the gestational diabetes was that long when I was a visiting nurse. So it really should be treated, checked early. But they do check it every time a woman goes for a prenatal visit. They do check the urine for glucose to see if glucose is filtered to the urine. That is a way of also checking for diabetes in general. But the blood sugar, the glucose tolerance test, which is the blood sugar that all mothers do, they drink this stuff. It's very sweet. I think it's disgusting. They have to wait a couple of hours. Then they see how the woman metabolizes or breaks down that sugar. And if it comes back positive the first time, then they go back for the 4-hour glucose tolerance test. And then they look at that.
Great, thank you, Beverly. And I think you have a second question?
Yes, although I want to piggyback on that one. Oh no, I forgot. I'm sorry. Let me go to the second one. Before 4 months, introducing solid food, what is the percentage again for the increase of obesity?
6 times, that's it, 6 times. 6 times, thank you.
Also, now I remember, is, oh, and I just blocked it out again. After 50, that's what happens. You block things out. When you turn 50, forget it.
Look it up.
When did they start checking all women for that, for the diabetes? When did they start doing that?
It's up to your primary care physician.
No, I mean, like, when did they start in general? Like, was that last year, 2 years ago?
Oh, they've always done it.
Oh, they've always...
My son is 39, going to be 39 in a couple of weeks, and I had it done 39 years ago.
Oh, okay.
They've always checked for gestational diabetes.
Oh.
That's one thing that hasn't changed in 39 years.
Oh, okay.
Great, and we have another question here.
Hi, Bev.
Hi, Terry.
Why does smoking affect the child's risk for obesity? It almost seems like it would be opposite.
Because that's also very a good question, because I didn't go into it. Because women who smoke, their babies tend to be a lower gestational age. This is something I was interested in myself. Because of the toxins in the cigarette smoke that crosses the placenta, it does affect the baby's cells. I was wondering, and again, this is a whole nother, Personally, I spent over an hour yesterday on the internet because I'm wondering, is it because more poor women smoke or is it the smoking itself? I don't know. Nobody can answer that question. I read study on top of study and I couldn't find that answer, but they're still looking at it. Even the Harvard School of Public Health didn't say why, but they do know what there's an increase. I think it's a combination of both.
I can't help but, this isn't a question, it's kind of a statement. Once again, poor women, we're blamed for everything. You know, it starts even before, I guess you get pregnant now, you know, so hopefully through this, though, we can almost change the lingo where we're not really blaming ourselves.
Right. And again, genetics does play a part into it. I didn't go in, I'm not a geneticist. I should get my niece to come in. She's a geneticist. But genetics does play a part in it. You will see these families where the mother and the father are very big. I have a friend, her granddaughter just received her first communion on Sunday. And there's a family picture. The mother is grossly obese. The father is grossly obese. She has 3 children. Her 6-year-old is in a size children's 12. A 12. And the grandparents were all obese. But the great-grandparents, this is what gets me, the great-grandparents, and I know this family forever, are not big. They were not big, they passed. But the mother and the father, both sets of grandparents, and now these 3 little children who I'm telling you, they're the cutest things, but they're so obese. I'm like, oh my goodness. And my heart is breaking for these kids because they're being bullied at school. They can't find the cute clothes to fit them. They're all girls who have body images to begin with. Now there's, luckily they've got the great little personalities. They're beautiful little girls. But they're starting out with these strikes, and we know we already went over bullying in our other presentations, so we know that's a risk factor, not just for their health, but we know. And Megan will be going into that.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, we have another
Chanel?
question, okay.
Chantel?
Do you think that, okay, so genetically these children are also obese like the grandparents?
Yeah.
And you said the great-grandparents weren't. Do you think that diet has
I
something to do
think
with
diet
it?
has a lot to
Because
do
if the
with
gene's
it.
there, if you're not
And
inhibiting
they're a
the gene.
middle-class family, very well educated. The mother's a school teacher, so very well educated people.
If you eat well, you won't stimulate that gene, but if you don't
Right.
have the means to get
But
them.
I've seen these girls eat, and they very big eaters. Is it, again, the old question, is it nurture versus nature?
Right, great
And
question.
we're not going to answer this ourselves, because they have been studying this for years, and nobody has an answer, and I think it's a combination of both,
Thank you, Bev.
okay?
So, and again, we're gonna actually, we have this great information, and we're actually gonna move forward, and we're gonna go away with some tools, so it's good that we get this information, but we don't wanna just leave you stuck with, well, what do we do with this? So that's why we have the skills and tools that were coming up at the end. So let's move to our next panelist. She is a certified personal trainer. She's been a personal trainer for the last decade. She teaches fitness classes and provides one-on-one training to small group training as well. She's currently the wellness advisor working on a community transformation grant funded by the Center for Disease and Control. The YMCA is the fiscal agent for this grant, and they are working on tobacco-free housing, tobacco-free workplaces, and healthy eating, active living education. The YMCA provides education to the community as well as support to landlords and employers who want to implement policies. And so again, please welcome me in joining Nikki D'Ambrosia.
I just want you to write down right now how you're feeling, physically. Not emotionally, just physically. How are you feeling? Tired, wide awake, bored, whatever it is. We're going to do a little exercise. All right, I want everybody to put their papers down, pens down. I want you to stand up for me. Now I want you to sit down. Bear with me here. Stand up. Sit down. Stand up. More and how they feel now. Brenda just kind of touched on it. Go ahead.
So I felt a little anxious because I'm thinking about all the things I need to do next and everything I have to do within the work week, and then actually just up and down, kind of went away.
Anybody else want to share?
Bloated and then blood pressure up.
All right, well, I just want you to know that you just did 5 squats. Modified squats, but you did 5 squats. All right? Why am I telling you this? Because you just sat through a presentation which was very knowledgeable, right? And I want you to think about kids when we're talking about this. All right? Kids in school, kids that you work with, your families, things like that. Think about kids sitting in a classroom all day long, right? Not getting to do that. Think about how they're feeling, right? So just 5 simple squats, right? Got you more awake, even if it's just for 2 minutes, okay? Because after listening to me, you might be asleep again. Who knows? All right, so just think about that as we're presenting. So yes, my name's Nikki. I work for the YMCA South Coast. I'm a certified personal trainer. I've been doing a lot in the community. I do see some familiar faces. And so we're going to talk a little bit about exercise for adults and kids. And then we're going to talk about smoking a little bit about that, okay? So we know pretty much why exercise is important, yes, for our bodies, our minds, all that. I'm going to talk about how much, and what you should be doing to keep healthy. All right, so exercise for adults. 2 hours and 30 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity every week is what the CDC recommends. Okay, that's 150 minutes of exercise, or I teach fitness classes, so that's 3 45-minute fitness classes a week. That's it, just to stay healthy. You don't need to do something 7 days a week, and you don't need to be in the gym 2 hours a day. All right, just to stay healthy, 150 minutes a week, 3 45-minute classes. All right, in that, muscle strengthening activities, 2 or more days a week, that work all the major muscle groups. You guys just worked your quads when you were standing up and sitting down, right? The big muscles in your legs there. Hips, back, abs, chest, shoulders, and arms. Those are your major muscle groups. Those are the ones that you want to keep strong by doing strength training. 1 hour and 15 minutes, which is 75 minutes of vigorous activity, and I'm going to define the difference between moderate and vigorous in a few minutes for you. So jogging, running, any kind of aerobic activity. All right, and then again, muscle strengthening activities on 2 or more days a week that work all the major muscle groups. So those are the recommendations by the CDC for adults. Okay, if you flip it over, we're going to talk about kids. All right, aerobic activity should make up most of the child's 60 minutes or more physical activity every day. It can include moderate intensity aerobic activity, such as walking, or more vigorous intensity activity, such as running. And then be sure to include vigorous intensity aerobic activity on at least 3 days per week. Okay. On the next page, talks about muscle strengthening for kids. Muscle strengthening for kids includes activities such as gymnastics, push-ups, on at least 3 days per week as part of the 60 minutes of activity that we were just talking about. And then bone strengthening. This is important, not only for kids, but also for adults. Some of us as adults and as we get older, our bladders can't handle jump roping or jumping up and down, so you have to kind of modify things. Or sneezing, yes, that's another one. But these are all things that our kids can do, and they love to do this kind of stuff. I'm sure a kid would rather get a jump rope out with his or her friend than run down the street for a mile or so. I know I would. I'd rather jump rope than run any day. All right, so that's it. So that's what the CDC recommends for how much and what you should be doing. So what's the difference between moderate activity and vigorous activity? Moderate activity means that you're working hard enough where you can still have a conversation while you're running or walking, but it's a little bit difficult, all right? So walking fast, doing water aerobics, aerobics, riding a bike, playing doubles, tennis, pushing a lawnmower. These are all from the CDC. So those are examples there. And then what is vigorous activity? All right, that's where you can't really have that conversation. Right, you're having trouble, it's getting harder to breathe in, you're working harder, that kind of stuff. So you're running, swimming laps, riding faster, you know, playing basketball, playing a sport, things like that. So that's the vigorous activity, okay? We already talked about muscle strengthening. What you should be doing is working the major muscle groups, like I said before. But most people ask me, well, if I'm doing muscle strengthening, let's say I'm doing bicep curls, how many should I do? How many sets should I do? What's a rep? What's a set? All that kind of stuff. So here it tells you, all right, on the muscle strengthening page, that a repetition is one complete movement of an activity. So if you're doing a bicep curl, that is one repetition. If I want to do 10 of those, that's a set. So 10 of these is one set. So it's 8 to 12 reps, and then at least 2 to 3 sets is the norm for people, okay? And again, it's working the major muscle groups that we were talking about. So you can do your muscle strengthening on the same day as you're doing your aerobic activity, or you can break it up. If I'm doing a 60-minute workout, I'm most likely going to do 30 minutes of aerobic activity and 30 minutes of strength training activity, just because I could not do 60 minutes of aerobic activity and not get bored, unless I'm playing a sport or something like that. Who wants to run 60 minutes? No, some people do, that's good. I like that. So, everybody good so far? Do we need to do 5 more squats?
No, we're good.
Alright, so what can you use to do muscle strengthening? You can lift weights, you can work with resistance bands, or you don't need any equipment. You could just use your own body weight, which is what you just did at the beginning of this presentation when you were using your own body weight to stand up and sit down. Push-ups, sit-ups, things like that. Gardening, you know, any kind of digging or shoveling or things like that, yard work, even housework. If you're doing spring cleaning, which it's that time of the year and everybody's moving furniture and doing all that kind of stuff, that's muscle strengthening activities. Okay, so don't think that you have to be in a gym to get the benefits of exercise. You don't. You don't. Yoga. Yoga is another good one. Anybody do yoga in here? I am not flexible. I can't do yoga. But it is something that is great for your muscles. It is great for flexibility. I'm sure kids are great at yoga because they are so flexible. Again, as we get older, it's harder and harder to do that. So I want to talk a little bit about, so those are the basics of exercise and why and how and what you should do. We know why, right? It's important to stay healthy. But I know that you guys out there in the community are working with families that are going to say, well, I don't have the money to get my kids in the gym, or I don't have the money to go to the gym. Yes? Have we heard that? Yes. Family activities, right? It's important to encourage parents, right, to get their kids active. If the parents are active, then the kids are going to be active. It all starts from the top down. We talked a little bit earlier about how you were feeling, like prior to this presentation, you know, talking about kids in school and whatnot. Who's heard of the Fall River Fitness Challenge? Awesome. They expanded that this year to do a school challenge. They did it the last couple of years throughout Fall River, but this year they expanded it to do it in Somerset, Swansea, Westport, Fall River, those are 4. Those are the 4 communities. So what the schools did, what the PE departments did, is they wrote in an application, right, and they sent it in to partners who host the fitness challenge. And we sat down, there were 16 schools that participated, and they said, this is what we're going to do for the challenge. From February to May, this is what we're going to do. And then there was a team of 4 of us that went out in April and did site visits, so we got to see these different challenges. In one of the schools, I believe it was in Somerset that we were in, it was an elementary school. They did a walking program for kids before school. All right, so separate grades on separate days. What they did was, as the kids came in off the bus, normally, before the challenge, they just hang out in the gym. You know, they would just hang out, do nothing, sit there, talk, whatever it was. So they started a walking program. They put cones throughout the gym in a square, and the kids would just walk and walk. And every time they got back to the beginning, they got a popsicle stick, and they knew that 17 popsicle sticks was a mile. All right? And they were going to walk from Massachusetts to, I think they were going to Disney. Okay? That's what their goal was. So what did that do for the kids? Any ideas? Any motivation for to get to Disney? Okay, what else?
To be fit.
To be fit?
The sticks. The sticks.
What about the sticks?
Because they can show, woohoo. It's
Yep.
like,
Yeah, I got 10 sticks.
Right.
Oh, I got 11. Right, what else?
Focus for class.
Exactly. We had teachers tell us that on the days that their kids were doing that walking program, because again, say first grade was on Monday. They did it Monday morning. And it was on a Monday that we went. Those teachers said that on those days that those kids were doing that walking program, they came into class more focused. They got all their energy out. They got to socialize before they got into the classroom, and they were focused. All right, perfect example of why exercise is important for kids learning. Not only did they learn how many sticks they needed to get to a mile, but then they were learning geography, so it was an educational component too. They were learning geography. They knew what state they were in and where they were headed. They were counting the miles, so there was one kid that couldn't participate because I think it was an ankle sprain or something like that, so that kid was able to count the popsicle sticks after class and kind of do the chart for them. They had a visual out in the hallway. So these are just some of the things that are really important for kids when it comes to exercise. All right, and it's happening in the schools. So if you can't reach the parents, sometimes you can reach the teachers and explain the importance to teachers, so at least they're getting some sort of exercise. On the flip side of that, I have a story to tell. I have a lot of stories, so that's what I'm going to do. And if I'm getting close to time, can you just let me know? Thank you. So I have two boys that go to Montessori school in Westport, and they were out at recess one day, and they're brothers, so they beat each other up playing soccer, whatever it was that they did. And so I picked them up from school that day, and they said, "Oh, we don't have recess tomorrow because we got in trouble." What was my first thought? Why are you taking recess away? It happens so much, even at home. Like the kid gets grounded and they can't go outside for a week, right? And get any physical activity. And Gabriel, who's the youngest one, he was like, "You don't like that punishment, do you?" I said, "It's up to your teachers. I can't do anything about it." But why? Why are we punishing kids from the one thing that makes them healthy? Why? Right? So again, when you're out talking to parents and you're working with families, we need to encourage them to, find other ways of punishment, if that's what they want to call it, for their kids. Don't take away the one thing that makes them healthy. Don't send them to bed with no dinner they need to eat. Okay? I understand they won't starve a little bit. My mom did that to me too, but they need it. They need nutrition. They need healthy nutrition. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But it's important, and it's important to talk to teachers. And so being out there for this Fall River Fitness Challenge was huge, and we saw a lot of great things going on, so it is happening in the schools, and it's becoming bigger, and it's something to be excited about. We have a Y guest pass that you can give to families that you're working with. We give them away. It's a day pass, so if they want to try out the YMCA, they can. Just so you know, the YMCA does offer financial aid for families with lower income. They'll work with the income to get memberships. The Fall River Y is under renovations right now, so it's kind of a mess over there, but let me tell you, when it's done at the end of this year, it's going to be beautiful. Brand new state-of-the-art 4-floor facility. Early education is going to be bigger and better, and their wellness center and fitness center is going to be bigger and better. So if you haven't heard of that, it's happening and it's in the process, and it's very exciting. All right, now I'm going to talk about Smoking, which I know can be a touchy subject for people. One of the things that we've been working on this grant is not about, it's been about policy change as far as smoking in homes and smoking in the workplaces, but our main role has been to educate people about the effects of secondhand smoke, all right? Secondhand smoke. How many heard that New Bedford Housing went smoke-free in January? Yeah, so New Bedford Housing Authority, January 1st, 2014, went smoke-free, not only in their units, but their entire property. All right, so there's no smoking anywhere on property. That's huge. And if anybody smokes in here, I'm a former smoker, just so you know. I know how hard it is to quit. I know how much, I didn't want to hear it when people told me, oh, yeah, you're a smoker, and, you know, you shouldn't smoke and all that stuff. I get it. I understand it because I'm a former smoker. But when we're talking about families and we're talking about kids, that's who's important. Right? I was on my way to drop off the kids at school today, and behind me was a woman in her car, talking to her kid in the car seat, smoking a cigarette in the car. Secondhand smoke. Do we know what that is? I'm sure you all do. Do we know how harmful it is? Do we know how many cancer-causing carcinogens are in a cigarette? Any guesses? Over 4,000. Do we know what some of those toxins are that are in those cigarettes? Ammonia. Tar, ammonia, lead, cyanide, rat poisoning, right? Same thing as cyanide. Formaldehydes. Exactly. And so going back to the pregnant woman that smokes, that's what when she's smoking, that's what she's giving her child. And when you're exhaling that cigarette smoke, and anyone around you is breathing it in, they're also at risk for smoke-related illnesses, including lung cancer, which can lead to death. All right? So secondhand smoke contains over 4,000 chemicals and poisons, including lead and ammonia, which some of you had mentioned. Children exposed to secondhand smoke are far more likely to be at risk for ear infections and asthma. All right? And no matter how much somebody says, you know, the building is airtight and the smoke can't seep through, that is not true. Smoke can get through walls, it can get through windows, it can get under doorways. You can't protect everything. All right? So opening the windows, air filters, fans, it does not eliminate the risk of exposure to secondhand smoke. Cigarette smoking causes more than 480,000 deaths each year in the United States. This is about 1 in 5 deaths. It harms nearly every organ of the body. It causes many diseases. And smokers are more likely than non-smokers to develop heart disease, stroke, and lung cancer. So I want to talk about secondhand smoke a little bit more. So as I started this grant position about 1.5 years ago, I was at New Bedford Housing, and we were talking to residents that wanted to quit smoking or wanted to learn more about what we were doing. And a woman came in with her husband, and they were talking, and she told us a story about her mother, who was a smoker, smoked in the house the entire time. Their parents were married 60-something years. They all lived in the house as kids growing up with her smoking in the house. Guess who died of lung cancer? The husband, who was a non-smoker, died of lung cancer. So that just goes to show how secondhand smoke can affect anybody. And it's really important to educate our families, the kids. The tobacco companies are now starting to target kids to get them addicted, because we've done such a great job at showing the community how smoking cigarettes is bad. They're finding another way to get kids addicted. Hookah pens, you know, things that look like Tic Tacs, But in that, we'll show you some ways that the tobacco companies are now starting to target kids. Have you heard of the hookah pens? Right? Looks like a pen. With a little clicker on it. Kids have it in school, and they're just puffing on it while they're in class. Things that you'll see in that, things that look like Tic Tacs. Everything's flavored, it's fruity, okay? So be aware, again, as you're working with families and you're out there working with children, understand what's out there, get to know the products that are out there, because that's now how the tobacco companies are starting to get people addicted at a younger age. Okay? Any questions so far?
What happens to the housing authority and people are caught smoking? What do they do? Like, what's the repercussion?
The housing authority has their own compliance, the ways that they're going to deal with that. It could be a fine, it could be, just like they would deal with any other lease, rule that's broken. It could be, 3 fines and then you're evicted. I also wanted to, this is another story I want to tell you guys, just because I want you to understand even healthcare systems and where they're going with this. So this is back to the housing authority. There was one woman, she has a mental illness, and she was seeing a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist wrote a letter to the housing authority asking for her to, this is New Bedford, for her to have a reasonable accommodation to smoke because of her mental illness. So her psychiatrist thinks that she should smoke to help her mental illness, and that she should be allowed to do it in her home, and that the housing authority should accommodate that. Okay? That's crazy. Crazy. There's no scientific evidence out there anywhere that proves that smoking helps mental illness. All right? So even some of our healthcare providers need to be educated. Okay? So any questions?
What was the approach and how difficult was it to get the housing
On board?
Yeah.
Luckily for us, New Bedford Housing was on board before the grant went into effect. So they had already had the plan. We went in, we have a wellness educator, my coworker Jamie, who's out there in New Bedford, in the trenches of the housing, on all the properties, offering education, offering support. That's kind of our role, is to educate and offer support, link people to cessation, let them know it's out there. In your folders, I made up a list of everyone that in the community that we know that offers cessation, tobacco cessation. So if you're working with somebody that wants to quit, so they were on board. The other 2 areas that we work, the communities that we work in, are Wareham and Fall River. They're a little slower to jump on board. However, we have had some private landlords, not public housing, but private landlords that have reached out to us and that we've helped. So the word is getting out there. It's coming. There's a lot of public housing in the state that has gone smoke-free. Cambridge is just gone. Boston's gone. I believe Taunton's going. New Bedford. I mean, there's a lot of communities out there that are going smoke-free. So
UMass Dartmouth, as of next year, is going to be a smoke-free
June
environment.
2015, UMass Dartmouth will be a smoke-free college campus. A lot of employers that we've been working with have decided, because we have the workplace smoke law, which says that you can't smoke inside, but a lot of employers are now making their properties. I think People Inc. is one of them, is a smoke-free facility, which is great. So employers are just making the campus a complete smoke-free environment. So.
And also on this guest pass, it's for ages 14 and over. Do they make any exceptions? We have Head Start.
Yes. Yes. What I would do is, depending on the Y that you want to go to, I'm assuming it would be Fall River. Michelle Alves is the membership director there, and Frank is the executive. I am sure that they can do something to work with you on that.
So guest pass?
Yeah, if you're under 14.
I don't work directly in the Y, so I'm more the community person. But
Are there warnings on these things? Because the one that looks like Tic Tacs, I would know because of the camo, and it looks like the cigarette package, but that icebreaker frost, I would buy that for my kid, not knowing.
Not knowing.
Thinking it's like candy or gum. Is there a warning like they put on cigarette packages?
I believe there is a warning. I'm not positive because I haven't seen all that stuff. There should be. It should say that somewhere on there that it does have tobacco or nicotine in it. But again, that's how easy it is to make a mistake, right? And just pick something up like that. And that's the target of the tobacco companies now.
And also, isn't it illegal not to sell this product to under 18?
It is, yes. They should have to show ID when they're buying tobacco products. So, that's a great question. So the question is, should kids lift weights? Should they be doing strength training exercises? The body weight exercises are the best thing to develop kids muscle-wise and their bones. If they're going to do anything with weights, they should do it either with a coach at school or a personal trainer or somewhere at a gym where somebody who's a professional knows what they're doing. I have trained kids, so it depends on, every kid is different, size, height, build, so it's different for every kid. So is it okay for them to do weights? Yes, but they should be doing it with A, somebody that knows what they're doing, and B, with the okay of the parent. That would be the first thing.
A lot of schools are thinking about extending the day. Do you know if there's any thoughts on them doing activities, like physical activity during the day to help with the kids? Because I think that's just going to make them more defiant.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It would be nice. It would be nice if exercise was incorporated, throughout the day. One of the challenges that I was talking about before with the schools, one of the challenges was stop, drop your pencil, and get up, and randomly throughout the day, the teacher would say, get up and do 10 jumping jacks, and then they would go back to work. So the Fall River Fitness Challenge was able to get to the schools and get them thinking about this. So now, even though it was meant for the PE departments, it was a challenge for the PE departments, it led over into the classrooms, just a little bit. So we're starting to get the word out there. Hopefully, if they extend the school days, they're going to give the kids a little more time to get up and get out of their seats and do something.
I'm going to date myself back to probably early 80s. I remember having a middle school teacher who taught history, which could be pretty boring. And if he saw too many people in his classroom gone, everybody got up and did jumping jacks. And it was in Somerset, and it was back when they had just petitions. There were no walls. So if you were doing jumping jacks, every other class knew that you were doing it. But he just, because he did that, people were able to focus, and he made learning much more fun.
Yeah.
And I still remember him to this day.
Right, and those are the things that kids are going to remember. They'll remember doing this challenge. They may remember, the school that did the walking club before school may remember that, but the kids that did the jumping jacks during class are definitely going to remember that kind of thing. So we had one school that was doing planks while they were waiting in line to go to the bathrooms. The kids are doing planks in the hallway. So, it's just, they got creative and they had fun with it, but, and it also, like I said, some of it led over into the classrooms, which is important. So, anything else?
I just want to add, we're talking about smoking, and I can't help but say this. She talked about the dangers of smoke, especially with babies. I know everybody knows me, I'm passionate about babies. Mothers, when a child is exposed to secondhand smoke, they're 60% more likely to have a SIDS. 60%. And
SIDS, can we
SIDS.
just identify what that is?
SIDS is crib death, sudden infant death syndrome, or previously known as crib death. It increases the child's risk of developing asthma, chronic bronchitis, emphysema as a child, as an adult. The list goes on and on. And so these mothers will stop smoking during their pregnancy, but then they start smoking again. And when the baby's a little, they smoke outside. And then they'll smoke in the bathroom with the window open. And eventually that smoke goes into the room. And then you go into the house and the children smell cigarette smoke. So this is just, I know it's, this is choices for life, and this is a choice. I've been asked questions about third-hand smoke lately. A lot of questions from my mothers about third-hand smoke. And they also say if a woman smokes and breastfeeds, she should smoke 20 minutes before she breastfeeds. Not recommended because smoking does decrease breast milk production. And if you look at the breast milk of a woman who smokes and a woman who doesn't smoke, if you actually look at the milk, besides the quantity, the quality is not there. You can see the difference in the breast milk itself. It's lighter, it's not as rich.
An example of third-hand smoke is the person that goes outside and smokes a cigarette and then comes back. The cigarette's out, the smoke's gone, right? They come back inside and they pick up their grandchild and they hold that grandchild. And now that grandchild is exposed to all those carcinogens that are left on the person, whether it be in the hair or on the clothes. So ashtrays, people smoke in their car, even though they're not smoking, you know, if you're in it and they're not smoking and they have smoke, you're exposed to that, what's on the seats, what's on the steering wheel, curtains, you know, anything. So that's an example of third-hand smoke. It was a good point to bring up, so people
And more and more
understand
studies are being done, but they're just starting to do the studies on third-hand smoke. And I'll hear, well, I washed my hands, but did you change your clothes?
Right. Did you go take a shower? Because that's the only
Right.
way you're going to get it off.
Right. But they do say at least an hour after you smoke, it does decrease the amount, but there's still some on there. So these are, I mean, we can do a whole training on smoking itself, but these are things, again, everybody knows me, I'm passionate about our babies, and, you know, they're smoking. They'll be feeding the baby and holding a cigarette, and I'm like, you know?
There's nationwide statistics out there, but I put in your folders local statistics for Fall River on smoking and secondhand smoke, so that's in there, I know time-wise. And then, if you really want to make an impact, or try and make an impact to parents who smoke around their kids, I put one of these in everybody's folder. If you pop this out, right, and have the child put a picture of them in here and put it on the refrigerator. It has worked for some parents. It has made an impact, so it's a magnet. You can put it right on the fridge. I have more of these, not with me, but I can get more if anybody wants them. So just subtle things that kids can do to talk to their parents about it, as simple as this. So thank you all for having me.
Okay, thank you, Vicki.